You think they care. You want to believe they care. That's your first mistake. Manipulators don't care. They calculate. Every word, every glance, every sigh that feels like empathy is a rehearsed act, a mirror polished for deception. They read you like an open book, learning your fears, your desires, your hunger for approval, until they know exactly what to say to make you lower your guard. Empathy, for them, is not a feeling. It's a scalpel. Compassion, a weapon wrapped in silk. They wear morality like armor, not to protect goodness, but to project it. The mask of care is their greatest disguise, a façade that disarms your suspicion while they rewrite your perception. The kindest smile often hides the sharpest blade. The listener who leans in closest is often the one collecting ammunition for later. In the dark psychology of power, care is a transaction. The manipulator spends it to buy your trust. They mirror your emotions, your pain, your rhythm, until you start believing they understand you, but they don't. They're just reflecting your light to hide their shadow. Never confuse emotional resonance for truth. What feels familiar can be fatal. Their care is camouflage. Their kindness is a strategy. Their morality is theater. If you're still here, you're already awake. Most people flee from darkness. You study it, you master it. Comment this below. I see through the mask. Number 1, the anatomy of the mask. Every manipulator wears a mask, but few ever remove it, because the mask is their identity. It's their armor, their disguise, their masterpiece. They craft it from charm, vulnerability, and selective empathy. Each expression, each tone of voice is engineered for impact. They understand that people crave the illusion of goodness more than the substance of truth. So they give you goodness, wrapped in words that drip with sincerity and intentions that rot underneath. The anatomy of their mask is complex, built on layers of psychological manipulation. The first layer is mirroring. They reflect your personality back at you, your mannerisms, your speech patterns, your moral values. It feels magnetic, as if you found someone who finally understands your wavelength. But that's the trick. They're not matching your soul. They're imitating your frequency to earn access to your defenses. The second layer is validation. They feed your ego until you confuse their flattery for loyalty. They compliment your intelligence, praise your discipline, admire your resilience, not because they believe it, but because it makes you predictable. When your ego is hooked on their approval, they own your self-image. And when they own that, they control your choices. The third layer is moral alignment. They act as though they share your principles, your sense of right and wrong. They speak your ethical language fluently, but it's mimicry, not conviction. Machiavelli wrote that it's not essential to have virtue, only to appear virtuous. The manipulator lives by that creed. They weaponize decency as strategy, virtue as theater, and when the time comes, they'll use your own moral compass against you, making you feel guilty for doubting them or cruel for resisting. The final layer is timing. Manipulators know when to be silent, when to offer comfort, when to withdraw just enough to make you chase their approval again. They understand that silence can be louder than words, and distance can create addiction. They master the rhythm of psychological scarcity, give, withdraw, repeat, until you start craving their attention like oxygen. Their mask is not built overnight. It's cultivated, perfected, worn with conviction. They become the savior, the confidant, the one who cares. And when they finally have you tethered, they reveal glimpses of control disguised as concern. They question your choices out of love. They make you doubt yourself for your own good. It's domination wrapped in affection. Here's the brutal truth. Manipulators don't fight for control. They seduce you into surrendering it. That's why their power feels invisible. You don't see the chains because you clasp them on yourself. They are masters of emotional architecture, building prisons that look like homes. Their morality is smoke. Their compassion is currency. And their words are tools of disarmament. They don't care who you are, only what you can provide. Validation, energy, access, obedience. If you want to become untouchable, you must learn to see behind the performance. Train your mind to recognize emotional choreography, the rehearsed empathy, the precise pauses, the strategic vulnerability. Observe without reacting. Listen without absorbing. Once you see the pattern, the illusion collapses. And when the illusion dies, their power dies with it. The strong don't resist manipulation by fighting it emotionally. They dismantle it logically. The manipulator's weapon is feeling. Your weapon is awareness. Detach. Watch the stage from a distance. See the act, not the actor. Most people are addicted to kindness because it makes them feel seen. But power is not about being seen. It's about seeing. Seeing the mechanisms behind the mask. Seeing the motive behind the move. Seeing through the façade before it becomes a fortress. If you're listening right now, you're already sharpening that vision. You're learning the language of power, the dialect of silence, control, and restraint. The Machiavellian mind doesn't seek approval. It observes, calculates, and acts without attachment. Let others chase illusions. You'll study the architecture of deceit until you become immune to it. You won't beg for truth. You'll recognize it, even when it's buried under flattery and falsehood. That's what separates the manipulated from the master. The manipulator thrives on emotional blindness, but once you awaken to their methods, they lose control, because now you control the frame. You define the meaning. You decide when to care and when to cut away. And when they realize their mask no longer works on you, when their false empathy falls flat, you'll see it, that flicker of panic behind their calm face, that moment when the actor forgets his lines. That's when you know you've won. Comment this below. The mask breaks when I stop believing. Number 3, the seduction of the mind. Manipulation doesn't begin with control. It begins with seduction, the slow poisoning of perception. The manipulator's greatest weapon isn't domination, it's infiltration. They don't kick the door in. They whisper from the shadows until you open it yourself. Every manipulator understands one timeless principle. People aren't moved by truth. They're moved by what feels true. So they craft experiences, not arguments. They design emotional illusions so convincing that you start defending them, even against your better judgment. They don't force obedience. They invite surrender. It always starts with attention. They give you what the world withholds, focus. When they look at you, it feels as if the noise of life fades. Their presence feels intentional, rare, grounding. But make no mistake, that's the first stage of seduction, targeted validation. They make you feel significant because they've studied what makes you feel insignificant. Every compliment has a purpose. Every nod of understanding has weight. They feed your self-image until you crave their gaze like oxygen. Then comes the emotional mirroring. They adapt to your wavelength, becoming the reflection you didn't know you were looking for. You start to think, finally, someone who gets me. But what you're feeling isn't connection, it's calibration. They are tuning themselves to your frequency to enter your mental fortress without resistance. They learn the rhythm of your emotions, the triggers that ignite your empathy, the wounds that drive your decisions, and with every conversation, they tighten the invisible thread that binds you to their control. Once they've secured your trust, they subtly begin the phase of dependency engineering. They position themselves as your emotional anchor. You start to rely on their validation to stabilize your mood. Your self-assurance becomes tied to their opinion. And this is where the real seduction unfolds, because now they don't need to demand your loyalty. You offer it. It's a masterpiece of psychological design, the illusion of safety built on the architecture of dependency. You start censoring yourself to maintain their approval. You second-guess your instincts because they've redefined what trust feels like. You begin to believe that cutting them off would mean losing a part of yourself, and that's exactly how they win, not through force, but through internal invasion. A Machiavellian manipulator thrives on the pleasure of control disguised as care. They understand that influence tastes sweeter when it feels voluntary. They'll make you laugh, confide, open up. Then they'll store every secret, every confession, like ammunition. They'll remind you later, not directly, but through implication. They'll drop words that hint they know you. that they understand you more than you understand yourself. And here's the darkest truth. They don't just seduce individuals. They seduce systems, workplaces, friendships, families, entire communities. They become indispensable. They plant seeds of trust everywhere, making themselves the central hub of emotional exchange. People orbit them without realizing they're trapped in their gravity. They use morality as bait. They appear principled, righteous, empathetic, not because they are, but because they know virtue is persuasive. They'll defend others publicly, condemn injustice passionately, offer help generously. But beneath it all lies calculation. Each act of goodness is an investment in credibility. Every moral display adds polish to their mask, because when the time comes to manipulate, they need you to believe in their purity. To the untrained mind, this looks like charisma. But charisma, in its darker form, is hypnosis. It captures the senses, blinds logic, and rewires trust. The manipulator's charisma is never spontaneous. It's rehearsed. They learn the art of rhythm, when to speak, when to pause, when to soften the tone. They understand that silence, used correctly, makes people reveal themselves. Seduction of the mind is not about lust or affection. It's about access. Once they've accessed your internal dialogue, they can plant beliefs, fears, and narratives that shape your behavior without you noticing. They whisper doubts wrapped in empathy. I just don't want you to get hurt. Or, you're better than the people around you. You deserve more. It sounds like care, but it's corrosion. Every phrase shifts your frame, subtly aligning your worldview with theirs. And when you finally question them, when a piece of the illusion cracks, they'll twist your doubt into guilt. They'll remind you of how much they've done for you. They'll call your suspicion paranoia. They'll weaponize your integrity against you until you apologize for noticing their deception. That's how deep the seduction goes. You start to defend the very person dismantling your freedom. But understand this: seduction is only powerful against the unaware. The moment you see the strings, the puppet show ends. You can't be manipulated by what you recognize. Awareness kills enchantment. When you begin to observe the performance instead of participating in it, you become untouchable. The antidote is detachment. Never let validation dictate your identity. Never let attention define your value. When you don't crave emotional supply, no one can seduce you. Psychologically stoic power lies in restraint, the ability to admire the charm without surrendering to it, to recognize the illusion and walk through it untouched. The Machiavellian mind does not reject seduction. It studies it. It learns its rhythm, its mechanics, its language. Because to master power, you must first understand how others use it. Once you grasp the architecture of influence, you can use it with clarity, not to deceive, but to protect, to lead, to outmaneuver those who weaponize care. So remember this: the manipulator's power is borrowed from your attention. When you pull it back, they vanish. Stay observant, stay calm, stay unreadable. Comment this below. My mind is my fortress. Number 4. The emotional battlefield. Every war for control begins and ends in one place, the mind. But it's fought on the terrain of emotion. That's the manipulator's battlefield. Logic is a fortress, but emotion? It's an open field, full of blind spots, and they know exactly where to strike. They don't attack your strength. They target your empathy. They don't confront your intelligence. They dissolve it through confusion and guilt. The manipulator understands that power isn't about overpowering someone physically or intellectually. It's about bending their emotional landscape until resistance feels like betrayal. They'll make you feel like the aggressor for defending yourself. They'll reframe your boundaries as cruelty. They'll call your awareness paranoia. That's the essence of emotional warfare. They don't need to destroy your confidence, they just need to make you question it. The battlefield begins subtly. A comment disguised as concern, "You've changed." A backhanded compliment, "You're not like you used to be. I liked the old you." Every word carries a double edge, designed to sound harmless but built to dig beneath your armor. They test your defenses, looking for the emotional crack that opens the door. And when they find it, they don't rush in. They apply pressure slowly, drip-feeding insecurity until it becomes self-doubt. You begin to question your perception, your motives, your worth. This is gaslighting, the silent art of psychological erosion. They rewrite events, twist facts, and distort memory until reality itself becomes negotiable. You start explaining yourself more than ever before. You over-apologize, you doubt your reactions. You begin to filter your words, afraid of being misunderstood. That's how the manipulator wins, not through confrontation, but through exhaustion. You don't even realize you're losing ground because it's disguised as compromise. But emotional warfare doesn't end there. It evolves. When manipulation meets resistance, they switch tactics. Suddenly, they become the victim. They play wounded, misunderstood, or unfairly treated. They weaponize sympathy. Because in the battlefield of emotion, guilt is the ultimate chokehold. They'll say, "After everything I've done for you," or "I can't believe you'd think that of me." Those words are crafted to disarm logic and trigger remorse. You step off the high ground, trying to comfort them, and in that moment, they reclaim control. That's how emotional dominance works. They provoke chaos, then position themselves as the one who deserves pity. A Machiavellian mind must learn to recognize these tactics not as personal attacks, but as strategies. The manipulator isn't emotional, they're strategic. Their outburst, their silence, their tears. Each is a move in the psychological chess game. They use emotion not to express, but to engineer reaction. When you understand this, the battlefield changes. You stop fighting emotionally. You begin to observe the rhythm of manipulation. You notice how chaos always precedes their demand for sympathy. How guilt always follows your attempt at independence. How peace always arrives right before they ask for another concession. Patterns reveal the plan. The manipulator thrives on your engagement. They want debate. They want justification. They want your explanations, because every explanation reinforces their control. The more you try to prove your innocence, the more guilty you appear. That's why true power lies in restraint. Don't argue, don't explain, simply withdraw. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. The man who controls his emotions controls his reality. To win the emotional battlefield, you must detach from outcome. You must stop needing to be understood, approved, or validated. The manipulator feeds on that need. When you no longer crave emotional resolution, you become unpredictable and therefore untouchable. Remember, every manipulator needs an audience. They perform morality, they display care, they dramatize pain. The moment you refuse to react, you end the show. Silence is not weakness, it's dominance refined into stillness. They expect chaos, give them calm. That's how you reverse polarity. You make their emotional energy collapse under its own weight. Machiavelli wrote that men are governed more by appearance than by reality. The manipulator leverages that truth. They build emotional illusions that look like sincerity. But the Stoic mind lives by a higher rule: observe everything, attach to nothing. When you see emotion as data, not truth, you can analyze manipulation like a map. You can trace its origins, predict its pattern, and dismantle it piece by piece. But the real battlefield isn't just between you and them. It's within you. Your empathy, your anger, your pride. These are the gateways they exploit. To win, you must master the terrain of your own psyche. Learn to recognize when your compassion becomes vulnerability. Understand when your ego disguises fear as control. Emotional self-awareness is the shield that turns their strategy into failure. Never let your kindness become your cage. Never let your decency be used as a leash. Power doesn't require cruelty, it requires clarity. The man who sees clearly is not cold, he's free. He knows when to care and when to cut away. He knows that peace is not given, it's guarded. On the emotional battlefield, there are only two outcomes. Either you anchor yourself or you drift into someone else's current. The manipulator's goal is to make you reactive. Yours is to become still. Stillness is the highest form of control because it denies them access to your energy. When they can't predict you, they can't play you. You must learn to stand in the storm and feel nothing but focus. The world will test you. People will provoke you. But when you master emotional silence, you radiate power that words can't touch. That's when the manipulator realizes they've lost the war before it even began. So remember this truth. Emotional intelligence without emotional discipline is a liability. Feel deeply, but respond strategically. Understand everything, but reveal nothing. Because once you master that duality, you move beyond being manipulated. You become the architect of every interaction. When you walk through life with emotional clarity, you no longer attract chaos. You expose it. You stop being a participant in other people's games and start becoming the silent observer who decides when, where, and whether to engage. That's true dominance. That's what it means to be untouchable. Number 5, the power of detachment. Detachment is not coldness. It is control refined into silence. It is the art of mastering your emotions so completely that nothing external can dictate your inner state. The weak believe detachment means not caring. The wise understand it means choosing when to care. It's the difference between reacting impulsively and responding with power. Detachment is what separates the manipulated from the untouchable. You see, manipulators thrive on one thing: emotional investment. The more you care, the more you can be controlled. Every reaction, every argument, every desperate attempt to prove your point feeds their system. They study your passion like a scientist observing a specimen, and the moment they see what moves you, they own a piece of your mind. But detachment breaks that link. It starves their control. Because detachment removes the emotional supply they depend on. The manipulator's influence doesn't die through confrontation. It dies through starvation. The less you react, the less they exist in your psychological space. They lose relevance. And when relevance fades, power crumbles. Understand this. Emotional detachment is not an escape from feeling. It's mastery over feeling. It's the discipline to experience emotion without becoming enslaved by it. Imagine standing in fire and feeling the heat, but never burning. That's what detachment feels like. It's the psychological armor that turns chaos into clarity. Machiavelli once implied that a ruler must learn to think with the mind of a fox and the heart of a lion, cunning but fearless. Detachment is the synthesis of both. It's the calm cunning of the fox, reading every move without reacting, combined with the unshakable courage of the lion. Acting when necessary, without apology, it's power without noise. Detachment is a skill forged through self-discipline. It begins with observation. When you observe instead of reacting, you create distance between stimulus and response. That distance is power. Every second you hesitate before responding emotionally is a second you shift from being controlled to being in control. The manipulator expects immediate reaction, anger, tears, guilt, explanation. But when you pause, when you meet provocation with silence, something unexpected happens. You reverse the polarity. The manipulator, who thrives on predictability, becomes uncomfortable. They depend on your emotional rhythm to conduct their game. Break the rhythm, and you break their control. Detachment is about refusing to feed chaos. You stop arguing. You stop defending. You stop proving your worth to people who've already decided to misunderstand you. You no longer explain your silence. You let it speak. And in that silence, their power dissolves, because silence terrifies those who live off attention. But detachment is not apathy, it's strategy. It doesn't mean you stop caring about everything. It means you care strategically. You conserve your energy for what matters. You respond only where impact exists. You invest in results, not reactions. A detached mind doesn't avoid emotion, it allocates it. It understands that energy, like money, must be spent wisely. To develop detachment, You must learn to withdraw emotionally before you withdraw physically. Leaving a manipulator is easy, if you've already left them mentally. The hard part is cutting the emotional tether, the attachment, the habit of explaining, of justifying, of hoping they'll change. Detachment kills that illusion. It replaces hope with observation. The manipulator feeds on your attachment because attachment blinds reason. You excuse red flags. You rationalize betrayal. You internalize guilt that isn't yours. Detachment tears the blindfold. It lets you see the equation clearly, what you give versus what they take. When you measure the imbalance objectively, emotion loses its hold. Detachment teaches you to value peace over validation, to choose clarity over comfort. You begin to realize that not reacting doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've outgrown the need to prove yourself. You stop playing emotional tug-of-war because you understand that the rope burns only those who pull. A detached person isn't numb, they're present. They see manipulation unfold in real time. They watch every guilt trip, every dramatic plea, every attempt to reclaim control, and they stay still. Stillness is intimidating because it mirrors the manipulator's own emptiness back to them. They can't anchor to someone who refuses to drift. But here's the paradox. True detachment requires self-connection. You can't detach from others until you're fully attached to yourself. You must know who you are independent of other people's narratives. That's the foundation of emotional sovereignty, the ability to define your reality without external permission. Once you achieve that, no flattery or insult can shift your core. Detachment isn't passive, it's assertive calm. It's saying no without explaining. It's walking away without announcing it. It's observing betrayal without emotional collapse. It's hearing manipulation and responding with measured silence. It's acting like a ruler of your own mind, not a prisoner of other people's behavior. The manipulator fears this kind of calm because it neutralizes their arsenal. They can't provoke you. They can't guilt you. They can't seduce you with pity. You've dismantled their emotional language. Their words become static. Their performance falls flat. And that's when the power dynamic shifts permanently, because now you're the one who defines the tempo. But let's be clear, detachment is not easy. It's a discipline forged through discomfort. The urge to respond will claw at you. The silence will feel unnatural. Your ego will demand validation, but you must remember, every unspoken reaction is a weapon sharpened through restraint. Every silence is an act of psychological war. Think of detachment as a blade. You sharpen it through awareness. Every emotional reaction you withhold adds another edge. Soon you carry an invisible weapon, one that cuts through manipulation, confusion, and fear. Without a word, you become a strategist, not a soldier. You stop fighting people and start mastering dynamics. In the Machiavellian world, this is survival. The one who controls emotion controls narrative. The one who controls narrative controls reality. Detachment gives you that control, not by force, but through refusal. The refusal to react, to absorb, to conform. Once you master detachment, something extraordinary happens. The manipulative lose interest. They can't operate without emotional feedback. You become unreadable, unmovable, unreachable. You become the blank wall against which their influence shatters. And here's the beauty. The same detachment that protects you from manipulation also grants you clarity in every domain of life. Business, relationships, power plays, all obey the same laws of psychology. The detached mind sees patterns before others see chaos. It navigates without panic. It influences without speaking. It wins without struggle. This is not cruelty, it's evolution. You're not suppressing emotion, you're refining it. You're no longer ruled by feeling, you're guided by principle. You act not out of impulse, but out of intention. That's the essence of cold power, emotion under full command. Detachment is not the end of empathy. It's the rebirth of discernment. You don't stop caring. You stop caring recklessly. You stop pouring yourself into people who trade sincerity for control. You stop bleeding energy into battles that don't build you. You begin to move like a shadow, calm, calculating, aware. The manipulator can only play those who still seek approval. When you seek peace instead, their tactics dissolve. They talk, you listen. They provoke, you breathe. They demand, you observe. Eventually, they realize they're wrestling with smoke. That's the point when you transcend manipulation completely, because detachment doesn't just make you harder to control, it makes you unavailable to control. You stop being reactive matter in someone else's universe and become your own center of gravity. The world stops pulling you in different directions because you move by internal command. So understand this. The ultimate victory in psychological warfare is not revenge, it's indifference. When you no longer need to prove, persuade, or punish, you've already won. You've stepped beyond their reach. Your mind is sovereign, your emotions disciplined, your peace unshakable. That is the power of detachment. That is what makes you untouchable. Number 6, the collapse of the manipulator. Every manipulator believes their control is eternal, that the web they've spun will hold forever. They build it with precision, strand by strand, trust, guilt, affection, illusion. But all webs share one fatal weakness. Once the prey stops struggling, the web loses purpose. The manipulator's collapse doesn't happen in one dramatic explosion. It begins the moment you stop reacting. Silence is their slow death. You must understand something fundamental. Manipulators feed on attention, validation, and the illusion of importance. When you detach, when you pull back your energy, they start to unravel. You've stolen their oxygen. They can't exist in a vacuum where their words have no impact. They need friction, emotional resistance, to keep their control alive. Without your reactions, they lose identity. Their entire strategy, built on controlling your mind, begins to implode from within. The first sign of collapse is desperation disguised as confusion. They'll act baffled by your composure. "What's wrong with you?" they'll ask. "You've changed." What they really mean is, you're no longer controllable. They will sense your stillness and panic because stillness breaks their rhythm. Your silence will echo in their mind like thunder. It exposes their dependency. When their subtle tactics fail, they escalate. They might swing between affection and hostility, love bombing one day, cold contempt the next. This emotional whiplash is not random. It's an attempt to reignite the drama they need to feel relevant. They'll try to provoke you, to bait a reaction, to get something. Anger, tears, explanation, anything that restores the illusion of control. But if you remain calm, they start spiraling. That spiral is the beginning of their collapse. The manipulator's identity depends on having power over others. When that power fades, they face an existential crisis. Without control, they feel invisible. And for someone addicted to influence, invisibility is agony. You'll see them try to reconstruct the mask, kindness, guilt, even vulnerability. But none of it works anymore because once you've seen through the performance, you can't unsee it. The illusion is dead. At this stage, their tactics shift into what psychologists call narcissistic injury. They become hostile, vindictive, or self-pitying. They'll rewrite history to make you the villain. They'll spread falsehoods to preserve their ego. But you must understand, this is not strength. It's desperation masquerading as pride. The more they attack, the more they reveal their weakness. Machiavelli wrote that men must be either crushed or conquered, never ignored. And yet, ignoring a manipulator is precisely what crushes them. They don't know how to process indifference. It dismantles their entire operating system. Their strength was never in dominance, but in your engagement. Without your emotional cooperation, their strategy collapses into self-sabotage. They begin to project. They accuse you of manipulation, of cruelty, of selfishness. It's their final illusion, the desperate attempt to reverse roles. They want to pull you back into the emotional game, to make you defend yourself, to re-establish the dynamic of power. But the detached mind doesn't defend. it observes. You recognize that every accusation is confession. What they claim you are is who they've been all along. The collapse of the manipulator is not loud, it's psychological erosion. It's the quiet disintegration of their image as they realize they no longer have influence over you. Their charm loses its sheen. Their voice loses authority. Their presence, once magnetic, now feels hollow. You begin to see the smallness beneath their arrogance, the insecurity masked by grandiosity. And here lies the great irony. The manipulator always believed they were the puppeteer, but in truth, they were just performing for your attention. You were the mirror that validated their illusion of power. Once you stop reflecting them, they confront the void within themselves. That's why they panic. That's why they lash out. Because now, without your energy, they must face what they've been running from, their own emptiness. But don't gloat. Don't celebrate their downfall. That would mean you're still emotionally involved. Instead, watch the collapse with detachment, like a scientist observing decay. The manipulator's destruction is not your revenge, it's their consequence. They built their entire identity on control, and now they're consumed by the very hunger they once used against others. True mastery is to remain composed while their empire burns. You don't need to expose them, argue with them, or warn others. Truth always reveals itself in time. Their inconsistencies will surface, their reputation will decay naturally, because lies are temporary structures built on emotional sand. The truth, steady and silent, will outlast them. In this stage, the manipulator may attempt reconciliation. They'll test if you're still susceptible. They'll apologize, but not for healing, for regaining access. They'll say all the right things. I've changed. I realize now what I did. I just want peace. But peace to them means control. Closure is another negotiation tactic. The detached mind knows this and refuses the bait. You owe no closure to those who thrived on confusion. You owe no explanation to those who disrespected your silence. The Machiavellian principle here is simple. Power, once reclaimed, must never be shared again. Let them knock on a door that no longer opens. Let your stillness be their answer. The collapse also teaches a deeper truth. Manipulators are fragile. Their strength is illusion. Their confidence is mimicry. Their control exists only as long as others believe in it. The moment belief dies, so does their influence. That's why awareness is more dangerous to them than confrontation. Awareness strips away the mystique. But this collapse isn't just theirs. It's your transformation. It marks your graduation from emotional prey to psychological strategist. You've evolved past the need for validation, past the hunger for approval, past the addiction to drama. You've stepped into the realm of command presence, where silence speaks louder than defense, where stillness asserts dominance without aggression. From this point forward, you no longer chase truth, you embody it. You no longer seek peace, you are peace. The manipulator's downfall becomes your awakening. The moment you realize that power isn't something you take from others, but something you reclaim from yourself. They'll try to understand how you became immune. They'll call it arrogance, coldness, even madness. Let them. Their confusion is proof of your evolution. What they once manipulated is now untouchable. What they once controlled is now self-governing. The collapse of the manipulator isn't a war, it's gravity. Every deception, every performance, every illusion eventually collapses under its own weight. You don't need to push, you just need to stop holding it up. And when the dust settles, you'll notice something. You don't hate them, you don't need to. You've outgrown them. Hatred is still connection, and you've moved beyond connection into independence. That's what true psychological liberation feels like. Not triumph, but serenity. The manipulator fades into irrelevance, and you rise into quiet authority. You move differently. You speak less. You see patterns others miss. You're not easily impressed, not easily provoked, not easily deceived. That's the mark of someone who has faced psychological warfare and walked out undefeated. This is where power matures, in silence, in detachment, in composure. You become the calm that others can't shake, the presence that unnerves the deceitful. And as you continue forward, remember, you don't fight manipulators, you outlast them. You don't destroy their illusions, you stop feeding them. You don't chase control, you embody it. Number 7, the laws of psychological power. Power is not about domination, it's about perception. The Machiavellian mind understands this. Control the way people see you, and you control how they act around you. Power begins not with wealth or position, but with psychological gravity, the kind of presence that bends reality around your silence. The manipulator mimics it, the master embodies it. True power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout, demand, or plead. It moves like a shadow, deliberate, patient, unhurried. It doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't explain, it demonstrates. The moment you stop trying to prove your worth, your energy shifts. You stop playing the game and start dictating the board. That's the first law. Power is silent. Manipulators weaponize emotion to create noise. They thrive in confusion. They project intensity to force reaction. But the powerful remain still. The Stoic man doesn't mirror chaos. He lets chaos exhaust itself against his calm. Stillness isn't absence, it's dominance refined. When your emotions no longer leak through your expressions, people start guessing. When they start guessing, they start respecting unpredictability is power's silent twin. The second law, control perception and you control narrative. In a world obsessed with reaction, those who master perception dictate the flow of reality. Never reveal everything, never speak all your thoughts. Let curiosity work in your favor. Power grows in the space between what people see and what they can't quite define. Mystery is leverage. The unknown version of you is always more respected than the predictable one. Machiavelli taught that a leader must appear virtuous while remaining strategic. That is the essence of psychological power, the fusion of image and intent. Appear calm but calculate deeply. Appear generous but move with precision. The manipulator copies virtue to deceive. The strategist embodies it as armor. Your morality must serve your mission, not sabotage it. The third law, detach from outcome, master the process. The weak obsess over results because they crave validation. The powerful focus on control, not of others, but of themselves. Emotional neutrality is the gateway to mastery. When you're no longer addicted to winning, you start winning naturally, because now your moves are driven by clarity, not fear. Power is not about forcing victory. It's about positioning yourself so that loss becomes impossible. The manipulator reacts, the master anticipates. The manipulator demands control. The master creates conditions where control happens naturally. This is the essence of Machiavellian design. To arrange circumstances so that people move exactly as you intended, thinking it was their choice. That's not cruelty, that's psychological engineering. The fourth law, never reveal your hunger. People respect what doesn't beg. The manipulator pretends not to care while desperately seeking validation. The powerful genuinely do not care. They want nothing from anyone. They've made peace with solitude. And from that independence comes magnetism, because detachment radiates strength. The less you chase, the more you attract. The one who can walk away holds the leverage. In every interaction, there's an invisible negotiation of power. The one who needs less always wins. This is why the Stoic man is feared. He's impossible to manipulate because his self-worth isn't negotiable. He doesn't react to rejection, doesn't cling to praise, doesn't fear loss. His value is self-declared, not socially confirmed. That's the kind of presence that unnerves manipulators. They can't hook what doesn't bite. The fifth law, use emotion strategically, not impulsively. Emotion is a weapon, but only when wielded with precision. A controlled display of anger can command respect. Uncontrolled rage loses it. A calculated smile can disarm an enemy. Excessive warmth breeds suspicion. Power is balance, the ability to turn emotion on and off like a switch. You must become the architect of your emotional landscape, not its tenant. In dark psychology, this is called emotional leverage. It's how the powerful influence others without coercion. They read the emotions in the room like a chessboard. They sense insecurity, fear, pride, and they use it not maliciously, but strategically. They understand that people don't move for logic, they move for feeling. Control the feeling and you control the outcome. The sixth law: don't expose your strategy, only your results. The manipulator needs validation through process. They talk about their plans, exaggerate their reach, and reveal their cards. The powerful don't explain, they execute. They move in silence, allowing the world to discover their influence through consequences, not conversation. Because the most terrifying thing about power is not what's visible, it's what's invisible. This is the power of absence. Presence commands attention, absence commands imagination. When you withdraw strategically, people fill the silence with their own projections. They think you're busy, plotting, powerful, and that belief alone amplifies your influence. A calculated disappearance is often louder than constant presence. The seventh law: be adaptable. Rigidity breaks, fluidity conquers. Power is not fixed, it's situational. The Stoic knows when to endure and when to strike. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors the flexible. Adaptation is the weapon of survival. Not changing your nature, but adjusting your tactics. You move like water, formless, shifting, relentless. The manipulator builds castles of ego. You become the tide that erodes them. Adaptability means mastering contrast. Sometimes you must be the storm, other times the mirror. Sometimes empathy disarms faster than dominance. Power is not brutality, it's calibration. You don't seek to dominate every moment. You seek to influence the ones that matter. The ability to shift tone, emotion, and demeanor on command makes you unreadable. And the unreadable are unbreakable. The eighth law: understand that power and morality are not the same. Manipulators hide behind morality to justify control. The Machiavellian sees morality as a tool, not a chain. This doesn't mean you abandon ethics. It means you refuse to weaponize them against yourself. Never feel guilty for being strategic. Never apologize for protecting your peace. The world respects results, not reasons. The ninth law: master the balance between visibility and mystery. You must be known enough to influence, but mysterious enough to intrigue. Oversharing is self-sabotage. Reveal your thoughts selectively. Enough to inspire curiosity, never enough to be predicted. When people can't define you, they project their own fears and respect onto you. That's control without confrontation. Finally, the 10th law: power is not taken, it's maintained. Getting power is easy. Keeping it requires discipline. The powerful lose when they get emotional, arrogant, or complacent. The manipulator collapses because they can't stop feeding their ego. The master sustains power by staying neutral, by remembering that control is not an event, but a state of awareness. The higher you rise, the calmer you must remain. Psychological power is about subtlety. It's not in loud displays of dominance, but in invisible mastery of perception, timing, and emotion. It's knowing when to speak, when to vanish, and when to act. It's the patience to wait for the perfect moment, and the precision to strike only once. Remember this: power that shouts is insecure. Power that whispers is eternal. The manipulator chases approval because they fear invisibility. The master embraces solitude because they know solitude sharpens vision. You can't rule the mind of others until you've ruled your own. The greatest empire is internal. So sharpen your stillness, refine your detachment, observe more than you speak. In every interaction, maintain that subtle, controlled dominance, the kind that doesn't demand recognition, yet commands it, the kind that moves without announcement, yet shifts the atmosphere wherever it goes. When you embody these laws, manipulation becomes irrelevant. You no longer fear deceit, because deceit requires ignorance, and you've replaced ignorance with awareness. Awareness is power. Awareness is freedom. And in that awareness, you'll find something deeper than control: sovereignty, the state of being ungoverned by external forces. The point where morality and Machiavellianism merge into one calm, calculated wisdom. You won't need to prove yourself ever again. Your composure will speak louder than pride. Your detachment will inspire both fear and respect. And your silence will carry the weight of 1,000 words left unsaid. That is psychological power. Not loud, not cruel, but absolute. Number 8, the architecture of dominance. Dominance isn't loud. It's not the roar of aggression or the flash of arrogance. True dominance is quiet, measured, invisible until revealed. It's not about towering over others. It's about constructing yourself in such a way that others naturally adjust around your presence. You don't command, you create gravity. That's the architecture of dominance, building an internal structure so solid, so centered, that no manipulation, no chaos, no deceit can shake it. Every manipulator tries to project dominance through control. They use fear, pressure, emotion, tools of instability. But the Machiavellian mind knows real dominance is internal stability disguised as calm. It's composure, weaponized. It's the ability to stand in the storm and remain utterly unmoved. Because when you're still, everything that depends on chaos eventually destroys itself. Dominance begins with one principle: self-command. The man who cannot command himself commands nothing. Your impulses, your anger, your desire to prove. These are the chains manipulators use to drag you down. You must dismantle them. Learn the discipline of restraint. The moment you realize that you don't need to respond to everything, you've already taken control. The most dangerous man in any room is not the loudest. It's the one whose silence makes others question their own noise. Self-command isn't suppression. It's structure. It's the conscious redirection of your energy. Every strong emotion, anger, lust, pride, can be transformed into precision, into focus, into timing. The Stoic warrior doesn't kill emotion, he repurposes it, he channels it into strategy. Because emotion, when refined, becomes insight, and insight, applied correctly, becomes power. The second pillar of dominance is awareness. Not the shallow awareness of observation, but strategic awareness, knowing not only what's happening, but why. Seeing motives before words, reading tone before meaning. You must train yourself to listen between the lines, to watch for patterns instead of reactions. Manipulators rely on your blindness to timing. The dominant mind studies timing like a weapon: when to speak, when to withhold, when to disappear. Power is not just knowing what to do, it's knowing when. The third pillar, presence. Presence isn't about being seen, it's about being felt. It's that unspoken authority that makes people lower their tone when they speak to you. Presence is built through consistency, the alignment of behavior, thought, and tone. When your words match your demeanor, when your confidence matches your silence, you radiate dominance without effort. People trust what feels steady and fear what they cannot predict. You must be both. Machiavelli said it's better to be feared than loved, but the real power is to be respected without needing either. Fear is temporary, love is fragile, but respect endures because it's earned through self-mastery. When you respect yourself absolutely, your time, your energy, your standards, the world mirrors that respect back to you. The fourth pillar, detachment from validation. Nothing weakens dominance faster than the need to be acknowledged. The manipulator seeks constant recognition because his self-worth is hollow. The dominant man is immune to that need. He doesn't seek approval, he sets the standard. He doesn't chase admiration, he creates inevitability. When you detach from validation, you stop moving on other people's timelines. You move when it serves you, and that timing alone establishes power. The fifth pillar, strategic empathy. Yes, empathy, but not the soft, sentimental kind. Strategic empathy is understanding emotion as data, not obligation. You study people's emotional triggers not to exploit them, but to anticipate them. You see fear before it's spoken, insecurity before it's confessed. This is how you stay steps ahead, not by guessing, but by reading. A true Machiavellian doesn't ignore emotion. He decodes it. He knows that every person reveals their weakness in what they over-explain, overreact to, or overvalue. Dominance is awareness without attachment. The sixth pillar, selective aggression. Dominance is not peace alone, it's power under control. You must be capable of destruction, but rarely need to use it. When you do act, it must be decisive, deliberate, and unforgettable. The Stoic warrior is not passive. He's patient. He doesn't swing wildly. He waits for precision, because one strike executed with focus does more damage than 1,000 acts of impulse. The manipulator flails to maintain illusion. The master moves once, and reality bends. The seventh pillar, mystery. Predictability breeds vulnerability. Once people can read you, they can plan against you. Mystery is not deception, it's design. It's the deliberate withholding of your methods, motives, and limits. When people can't map your reactions, they can't manipulate them. Let your silence confuse, your composure intimidate, and your unpredictability keep them off balance. The more they wonder what you'll do, the more they respect what you could do. The eighth pillar, emotional neutrality. On the battlefield of interaction, emotion is leverage. The manipulator wins when you react. The dominant wins when he decides you must learn to absorb pressure without release, to remain calm under accusation, criticism, or chaos. This doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means your feelings obey your logic. You choose when to act, not when provoked. Because emotional neutrality is the ultimate form of psychological intimidation. It says, I see everything, but nothing controls me. The ninth pillar, silence.